So I'll just list the topics. As I just said, you don't need to take notes of this. I would actually share the PDFs of it. All the things that I'll be explaining here, I'll be actually sharing the PDFs after the class. So once you go home, either take a print of it or better write in your notebook so that you don't lose the prints somewhere. If you take prints, तो just stick them in this place. ठीक है ना? Staple कर लें, stick कर लें. Easy है. इसमें भी study topics like acid rain, catalytic converter in the cars, then ozone layer depletion, and global warming, stuff like that. ठीक है? तो उसमें I'll just list down the topics. You could actually give this title, and again, don't try and copy this because I'll just go through it a bit fast. The easy चीजें, and since I'll be sharing the PDFs, so there's no point in writing all this. लेकिन heading आपने दे दी, so that you know okay, it will be in the PDFs and all. तो वहाँ से आप इसको फिर copy कर सकते हैं. So the topics that we'll be covering in it include this acid rain, ozone layer depletion, then we have this catalytic converter, the role of catalytic converter in cars, global warming, eutrophication, and these herbicides or pesticides. These kind of things, right? Links, things which are linked to the environment. Among all these, I'll just start with this eutrophication. That's a bit more important, comes quite commonly in questions. It comes in structured paper at time for you to explain what and how this eutrophication happens. इसको भी मैं explain करूँगा, and as I said, okay, you don't need to write all this. Eutrophication, in fact, is a phenomena that happens in water, and it is excessive growth of plants in the water, right? जो water bodies होती हैं near to the field areas where we grow crops, different kind of crops like wheat, sugarcane and stuff, cotton, etc. So the water bodies adjacent to such fields, because the farmers use a lot of fertilizers in the fields. So what happens is that the fertilizers, extra fertilizers, in fact, they sort of, with the rainwater, go into the water bodies like ponds and lakes adjacent to the fields. And once the water of that water body is like rich of the minerals, because my fertilizers would be coming a lot. So once the minerals are a lot in that water, what happens is that water plants start growing in it. जो water plants होते हैं, we call them phytoplankton. We don't have this term in the syllabus as such. But you should know that the water plants which float on the surface of water, like algae and all green plants, they grow in the water, and once they die, after that this eutrophication thing happens. So isko, all this that I just explained, I'll just draw it through a diagram to explain it further. So let's say we have this crop or field area where you're growing excessive fertile crops. So in the crops or fields, the excessive fertilizers that we use, they enter into this water body, into that pond or something, जो field के साथ adjacent area with water system into it. So the excessive fertilizers which are used in the crops, once they are in this water, so because of the mineral rich water, plants will start growing like algae and all. They'll start growing on the surface of water. So plants or water plants or algae. So you don't need to take these notes. Okay, I'll be sharing the PDFs for this. बस आप टाइटल दे दें नोटबुक में कि what environmental chemistry is what we are doing, and we'll be covering all these concepts in it. And I've started with eutrophication. All these things that I'm explaining, they're written in the notes properly. तो अभी बस आप इनको समझ लें. That will save a lot of time for us. So water plants or algae will grow on the surface of water. And if you go to Punjab side or places where there are a lot of fields and things, you would see that the water bodies next to the villages and places, they're actually full of green sort of plants already. The water is not like clear and crystal blue or something. It's full of plants. और वो इसलिए होता है because we use lots of fertilizers in the adjacent fields, and such fertilizer in water that makes or helps the water plants or algae to grow on the surface of it. Eutrophication happens afterwards. और eutrophication क्या है? When these water plants or algae, when they grow on the surface of water, the first thing that they do is that they block the sunlight from entering into water, right? So initially, the sun rays could not enter into the water. That is its first harmful effect. But the main harmful effect starts when the water plants or algae, after completing their life cycle, they will die. So there is a chain reaction which happens here. Excessive fertilizers help algae growth in water, and once the algae are dead, after the algae or water plants are dead, then what happens is that because the algae or water plants, they're organic compounds, right? So what happens is the bacteria in the water, they decompose these dead plants on the surface of water. जो dead algae hai, the bacteria decomposes them. So bacteria decomposes the algae. And once the bacteria decomposes the algae in the water, it actually use oxygen of water, like the oxygen which is dissolved in water, the O2, okay, oxygen, O2. There are two types of oxygen in water. One is the one which is covalently bonded with the hydrogens, and the other oxygen is this dissolved oxygen. So the fish or the animal actually breathe this oxygen, not water's oxygen. Okay, water की oxygen नहीं आती. वो nobody could actually, no fish would be able to take out this oxygen out of water. So this oxygen which is dissolved in water, that is the one which a fish uses. But bacteria uses this oxygen to decompose the plants or the dead algae. And what happens as a result? The oxygen content decreases in water, and when the oxygen content of water decreases, the fish or the animals in water will die. This extreme effect is called eutrophication. Okay, so chain of events, in fact, it happens, and the entire phenomena is called eutrophication. I'll just go through it once more. So eutrophication, in fact, is the excessive growth of plants. You mean false, troph mean plants. So it's like excessive false growth of plants in water. And why does it happen? Because of the excessive use of fertilizers in the fields. The excessive use of fertilizers increases the mineral content of water. Because of so many mineral in water, what happens is the water plants or algae will grow on the surface of water. After completing their life cycle, the algae are dead. And to decompose this algae or dead plant tissues, the bacteria uses oxygen from the water. अब जब bacteria oxygen use करती है from water, the fish cannot use any oxygen because there is no oxygen as such left. In water where there is this eutrophication going on, we cannot have fish or animals in water survive. So this kind of extreme effect is called eutrophication. So where does it link to modern agriculture? We can get a lot of good crops, we know that, by using fertilizers. But we can get good crops, but water bodies adjacent to such areas, they are badly affected. ठीक है, तो ये इसका एक harmful effect है which is linked to our environment. You understand this? Yes, Samir. See, the thing is that this is fresh water system, right? A pond or a lake is a fresh water system. A fresh water system is very important part of our ecosystem, right? So if your water bodies cannot help fish or animal to survive in it, that is eventually linked to the overall environmental effect. You know, like there are so many predators or animals which feed on fish or many other things. And once your fish is not there, such animals cannot grow or live. And that links to all the other animals too, right? And we don't want our all water bodies to be, full of fertilizers that we are just using to get more crops. So if you're damaging all the water systems in such a way, then there would hardly be any fresh water body where fish would be able to survive. So it's really a bad, harmful effect to the environment. Okay, all this is written in the notes. ठीक है, ये सारा points में लिखा हुआ है. So I said it comes in structured paper at time for 3-4 marks. So you have to write it in sequence that excessive fertilizers help algae to grow, and once the algae are dead, the bacteria use oxygen to decompose that. That decreases oxygen and hence the fish could not survive in such water. So ये तो हो गया eutrophication. Up the next, which is rather also important, is catalytic converter and the role of catalytic converter in the cars. All right, now the catalytic converters, they're also used to decrease harmful effect of combustion of crude oil, right? Like we burn crude oil in our cars, combustion engines mein, and in the cars, I'll rather draw one. That's my dream car, obviously. Mr. Umar, you don't like it? So in the engine, we have this petrol, which burns by using oxygen from the air, right? So when the petrol burns, what happens is that it's supposed to form carbon dioxide, it forms water, it forms carbon monoxide. With the air, nitrogen goes into the engine also, right? Okay, the air comes from the air filter. It simply is the oxygen from the air. So air में 80% is rather nitrogen itself. So nitrogen is also coming into the engine, and during combustion, nitrogen is a very stable gas. Normally it doesn't react in the engine, but when the temperature is too high inside the engine, then nitrogen turns to nitrogen monoxide and nitrogen dioxide and some unburned fuel. Especially when the cars are old, some of the petrol doesn't get burned and it starts coming out through the exhaust or silencer. So from the engine, there's this duct that takes all these harmful fumes out, और जो कार के बैक साइड से fumes आ रहे होते हैं silencer से, that's where all this is going. So in the engine, the petrol burns, oxygen and nitrogen come from the air, and inside combustion gives us heat, and heat say, the piston of the car is pushed and the car moves. But during the process, all these oxides are produced. Up in carbon dioxide is something you cannot stop because every combustion reaction gives carbon dioxide, right? And beside that, water is not harmful. That can go out into the air, no problem. But all the other things, they are harmful. Okay? So these are like harmful oxides or substances. So just to stop them from going out into the air from the exhaust, what they do is they put this catalytic converter on the path of the silencer pipe. Silencer ka jo pipe hai, under the car, there is this Yes, I'll do that. So on the path, the pipe of the silencer duct, there is this box-like thing, and that is called catalytic converter. Now, catalytic converter consists of platinum or rhodium metal plates, sieved plates like that. So what these catalysts do, that's why we call it catalytic converter, because it contains expensive catalyst. So these catalysts, in fact, make sure that these harmful oxides do not go out into the air. And this catalytic converter makes these things react with each other, and it makes them get converted into nitrogen or carbon dioxide or water. So what you need to know about this concept: one, catalytic converters are good. They're actually placed in the cars just to make sure that these harmful oxides or things do not go into the air. And then you need to know that the catalytic converters consist of these expensive catalysts. Platinum and rhodium are like more expensive than gold even. They're thin plates or sieve-like structures, in fact. So more expensive cars have more expensive, larger catalytic converters. So when these fumes pass through these plates or catalytic converter, so all these, other than CO2 and water, all these things react with each other. Unburned petrol reacts further, and eventually they get converted into nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and water. And carbon dioxide and water will always be there. ठीक है, वो आप नहीं remove कर सकते. They will always be there. So the job of catalytic converter is to convert harmful oxides into less harmful oxides. And if the catalytic converters are not there, like in the old cars, okay, we don't have a catalytic converters placed. So older the car, greater the bad effects to the environment of that car, obviously. That's not funny. Even the catalytic converters get old and you need to get them washed and cleaned. Yes, because it's a seed structure, right? And your car is like 4 or 5 years old. You need to get it serviced. They take out the whole silencer pipe and they clean it with chemicals, and then again it's new. So the catalytic converter is like very stable metals, and if you keep it clean and serviced, so its life is more than the car's life itself. So kahin nahi jate wo. But their job is to make sure that these harmful oxides do not enter into the air. But you need to remember again that catalytic converters are not 100% efficient. I mean, they try their best, but they're not 100% efficient. So some of the fumes or exhaust fumes of the combustion petrol cars do have some harmful oxides in it. These kind of things come in MCQs. If cars are fitted with catalytic converters, and still the fumes or exhaust contain some harmful oxides, to suggest the reason for this. The reason is that none of the equipment or machinery or operators is 100% efficient. Even if it's 95% efficient, so 5% of these will still be going out, right? So you need to know that. And especially the old cars, big trucks, old trucks, especially buses and stuff, they don't have these catalytic converters. In Pakistan, these things are coming and people are understanding these. But 10, 15 years back, even if a car was fitted with a catalytic converter, you know, these expensive cars are fitted with a lot of sensors. So if its catalytic converter is blocked, choked, jaise AC ki jali hoti hai, it's like sieve, jab wo block ho jati to AC doesn't work well. So just like that, if the car's catalytic converter is choked, full of all these dust particles and stuff, so it gives sense, you know, check engine light, because something is wrong with the car. So the mechanics would simply take a pipe and they just hit it hard into the catalytic converter and they break it. So tod hi dete. Fumes could go out easily. That is the best cure to remove the check engine light. And nobody at that time knew. 10, 15 years back, even if the cars were fitted with these kind of converters, the people thought they're like blocking the exhaust fumes. They should not be there. वो अपनी गाड़ी का वो इससे engine की efficiency improve होती है, no doubt. Your car runs slightly better maybe, but it's extremely harmful for the environment. that you just break the sieve or catalytic converter inside. ठीक हो गया? अब इसमें कोई question है पूछें. These are relatively easy things, and the PDF that I'll share, it has all these equations and stuff written in it, but they're important, right? Because these things are like very common recent days problem of environment that we are facing, and most of these problems are linked to chemistry itself, because these are chemicals which affect our environment, and we need to study that in chemistry mostly. Like physics mein, obviously you don't study this stuff perhaps. इसके बाद this acid rain. You know about acid rain? You guys know about it? Umar, you know acid rain? These people might be knowing, but I want to know your thoughts on acid rain. There are cities where acid rain happens. You know that? Back in South Africa? Yeah. Did I explain acid rain? You did. I didn't remember writing this, but I don't know. Acid rain. So what happens in acid rain is that the cities which are extremely populated, or the industrial cities, there is a lot of industry working for many decades. So from the factories or the combustion processes of the factories, the smoke that comes out, many of these factories smoke contains sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, harmful oxides. So the sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide are the harmful oxides which are produced by the industry and by the combustion of the petrol in the cars. Okay, not all the cars are fitted with the catalytic converters, and especially when the cars are old, so these fumes do come out into the environment. So the source of these harmful oxides, these are acidic oxides, by the way. The source of these oxides are the industrial combustion processes and the crude oil combustion. Amna, you don't need to take these notes. I'll be sharing the PDF, right? You joined late. Maybe you're writing all this. You don't need to, because I'll be sharing the neat PDF notes for it. Abhi main sirf isko explain kar raha hu. So when these acidic oxides would go out into the air, what happens is that they're already there, and when it rains, the rainwater in fact combines with sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide, and it starts coming down as sulfuric acid or nitric acid. Okay, water reacts with acidic oxides to make acid, right? SO2 and NO2 are acidic oxides. Rainwater would react with them, and it would actually come down on the earth, obviously, on the ground. And on the ground, the harmful effects of the acid rain are many. In fact, all the buildings and structures and statues which are made up of marble, calcium carbonate. If you have made a statue which is made up of marble or calcium carbonate, and it's exposed to the acid rain for 20 years maybe, so that structure or building or marble statue would actually be damaged quite badly because of the acid rain over the years. Here, not only marble and all these, the pH of soil changes, because the acidic water would always be around, and the pH of soil will turn acidic. Or acidic pH may plants do not survive well, right? Plants can survive best in neutral pH or maybe slightly alkaline pH, because all or most of these fertilizers we use, they are slightly alkaline. So acidic pH mein the plant survival is very difficult. So pH of soil changes, and that damages plants. And then there are people who suffer from skin problems and breathing issues, asthma and stuff. Like people living in such areas or cities, like the workers who work in those factories, because they can't go anywhere. Sometimes they live there, there are colonies there, they live and their families live there. So when every time it rains, initially there is acid rain in it. तो जब आपके पास acidic fumes होते हैं, harmful oxides होते हैं, तो you get these skin irritations and allergies, you get breathing problems too. Asthma is one very common problem linked to it. So all this harmful effect is because of the excessive industrialization which happened in 18th century, in fact. और उससे जो we do get a lot of useful products from industry, but this is the one harmful or bad effect of excessive industry everywhere. तो ये acid rain है, right? Again, all this detail is written in the PDF notes. सब लिखा हुआ है. You get questions, they ask you what oxides cause acid rain. MCQs में आता है, तो typically it's this sulfur dioxide, which is the common, oxide which we blame for acid rain. And the source of acid rain, oxides, industrial processes and combustion. And then they ask you to show the equation how the acid rain is caused. तो फिर आप water and acid का reaction करा के you can show how this acid is formed. फिर the acid which enters, उसका जो harmful effects हैं, buildings पे, statues पे, soil, pH, plant पे effect उसका, और जो people living in such places, they're affected by the acid rain. तो अब ये भी हो गया. अब if you got a question here, you could ask, कुछ को doubt है इसमें तो हाँ, easy topics, right? They're quite interesting too because they're quite recent concepts that you're studying. अच्छा, global warming भी मैं explain कर देता हूँ. Global warming पे questions are placed less now because there are multiple views about global warming recently, and even ozone layer depletion. इस पे भी scientists are clearly divided now. Some scientists say that ozone layer depletion is an ongoing process. Ozone layer gets depleted, it gets finished at time in different places, and it gets healed up. खुद ही बनती भी रहती है वापस. So it's not much worried about. तो लेकिन ये है कि still we have this in our syllabus, तो हम पढ़ते हैं. Global warming is one of that. What is global warming? Global warming में the major culprit gas is methane gas and CO2 gas. So methane and CO2 gas. CO2 gas comes from the combustion. Methane gas comes from natural sources. There are so many places on the earth where methane gas actually is sort of coming out of the water. Like there are, wherever you have crude oil, with the crude oil, you always have this natural gas or methane gas. So the major source of natural crude oil or gases is ocean. So in ocean, there are so many places where methane gas comes out of the water continuously like fountains. So excessive loss of methane gas into the atmosphere. Our atmosphere has to have a very specific and uniform ratio of gases in it. Our atmosphere is supposed to have oxygen, nitrogen, water vapors, moisture, trace gases, noble gases. This natural atmosphere. Okay, so sun rays enter this natural atmosphere easily, and on the ground, maybe because this natural atmosphere has its own density of gases, right? Natural, like oxygen, nitrogen, and water vapor and all. And the sun rays could enter and reach us on the surface of Earth. But once these harmful gases are produced and they enter into the atmosphere, what they do is like CO2 and methane and all, these gases, they increase the density of the air. Like with more CO2, CO2 is a dense gas, more methane gas, the density of atmosphere increases. It becomes more dense atmosphere in that place. So when that happens, the sun rays would enter the atmosphere, but because this atmosphere is much dense or thick now, these sun rays cannot bounce out of the atmosphere. They cannot escape. So because the atmosphere is dense, these sun rays keep bouncing back on the surface of Earth again and again. So Global warming, or we call it greenhouse effect also, is a concept which happens because of these gases which increase the density of the atmosphere. And when that happens, the sun rays cannot escape the surface of Earth. And when they cannot escape the surface of Earth, what would happen? The temperature of the Earth would rise. And when the temperature of the Earth rises, that leads to this phenomenon called global warming. And we know when we say the temperature of Earth is rising, it leads to many harmful effects or environmental phenomena like excessive melting of glaciers, because the temperature of Earth would rise and glacier ice will melt fast. And when the glacier ice will melt fast, it leads to excessive flooding. You know, glaciers melt और हमारे water bodies or system में lots of water would come at unexpected days and times. And the change in the temperature of the Earth leads to unexpected climate changes too, like cyclones and stuff. Until this global warming is there, the temperature of the Earth doesn't tend to go down. Again, as I said, these kind of concepts have now become disputed in science or chemistry. Scientists say that this kind of thing happens every maybe 50,000 or something. Like then the Earth goes to ice age and stuff. So the temperature of the Earth decreases, then it starts increasing, then it decreases, and this is a cycle going on. So every time, but now we sort of say that global warming is caused by humans because of methane to chale naturally produce hoti rehti all the time, but CO2 gas and the way we are producing CO2 gas has never been produced before this. So we are actually contributing in the global warming by producing excessive carbon dioxide into the air, and that natural process of global warming have become fast many times in last 100+ years. Obviously, it's a bit more sort of bothering. Otherwise, it's a natural phenomenon. Also, that would be enough for today. अब ये मैंने main topics cover कर दी. I'll be sharing the PDF. उसको आपने पढ़ना है अपनी notebook में. You need to write it. ठीक है? Once you read it all again, then you write it, so you'll understand it better. चल इसको हम complete कर देंगे. Then we have a few things about detection of ions and gases and tests जो ATP के लिए important है. आप लोग ATP का पेपर है ना? Exempted? How many of you have exempted ATP paper? Umar? Exempt? You are not giving exam now? लेकिन एग्जाम नहीं कराया. चलो कोई बात नहीं, कोई बात, नो प्रॉब्लम.